everybody, my name is Tiffany, I'm the Tipsy Artist, and today we're going live to paint this super cute little Happy Halloween painting. It's like a little jack-o'-lantern on a topiary and has lots of fun techniques for some florals, roses, and also you can just do a pumpkin if you just want it to be a pumpkin, or you can do the whole jack-o'-lantern face. So either way, and we've got our traceable for this, so it makes it super easy to do. So I went ahead and did mine. I have a whole nother video on how to do a traceable, but they're super easy. These come with your kit. They come with the graphite paper and also this whole little traceable shape. They also come with a colored pencil and a little bit of fun tape in your kit too, so that you can secure it to your canvas. And then I like to use a colored pencil so that I know where I've been as I trace. So that makes it a lot easier. So I've got mine all laid out here. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start the painting process. And your kit also comes with a whole bunch of beautiful paint here too. So this is what our little paint kit looks like. Very fun. Put that back there. All right, now I've got brushes that come with the kit too. So I've got my mama brush, and then I have my little buddy brush, and then I also have a little bit brush. All right, so we're all ready to go. Okay, I also have a little bucket of water nearby, and then like a little rag, and just some disposable plates. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do all of this background here first. So I'm gonna start with my mama brush, and I'm gonna go ahead and have a little bit of white here on my plate all ready to go. And then I want just a touch of the black. So I've got some Mars black here. I'm gonna go ahead and place this on my plate. All right, just about a little pea-size amount. And I'll go ahead and get started with the mixing on this. Now you can have a dry brush if you want, or you can make it just moist, but then I also like to just dry it off a little bit here too, so there's no excess water in the brush. And then I will go ahead and just do a little tiny touch of the black, see, tiny amount, and go ahead and push that into the white. I'm just going to make a really nice light gray. So I've got a lot more white in the mix on this than I do the black. So again, just really super tiny touch of black, and then I'll push that into a bigger dollop of the white. So this will just give me a really nice, pretty light gray. So the first technique on here is just to do a cross stroke, a really nice textural cross stroke in the background. And I always keep a little bit of that pure white just in the background as well to kind of dip back into that. But I'll go ahead and start by making what looks like the letter X over and over and over again. Just lots of repetition on this. And then I also alternate into that pure white paint, and I'll push that back and forth. And again, just little tiny cross strokes. But it definitely helps to alternate between the two. That way you've got that contrast of the darker gray happening. And then when I push in the pure white, then you see a more textural effect happening here in the background. So I'll just keep working that back and forth. And you want to make sure that as you're pushing this onto your canvas, you want to have your brush more over to the side. So you'll want to hold the brush parallel to the canvas. And that will allow more of the flat side of your brush to face the canvas. So just push that back and forth. Now as you get closer to this shape here, then you want to change how you hold the brush a little bit, and then I'm going to go into more of that medium gray. But I'll hold the brush just more like a pencil, and that will give me a nice thin line edge with the brush, and that helps me do my cut-in work. So I'll take that all the way around the edge. And then to work it back into the background, then I'm going to go ahead and go back over to holding it more parallel to the canvas, and then do that little cross stroke, just back and forth. And we're going to keep working this in all the way throughout, all over the background here. So I do still have a little bit of cut-in work all the way around all these tiny little roses. Now because there's so much of that and there's so much of this little tiny in and out happening, I'm going to go ahead and switch gears to my little buddy brush here. I'm going to go ahead and push into that medium gray, just back and forth. A little bit of a smaller brush head, so this can work into these tinier spots much easier. So I'll go ahead and work into this small section with my little buddy and just hold it just like you'd hold a pencil, give you more control that way. And then I've still got my mama nearby because I'll use my mama brush to go ahead and work into the background. So I've got a lot of that detail work done now. Now I need to feather into the background. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my mama brush again. I've got my gray, I've got my white off to the side, and then I want to feather that out into the background. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a little bit of a crisscross, just back and forth. And then little tiny X's, and then this will give me that really nice texture that I love. And again, you really want to treat it just like you're doing little tiny X's. That's really the best way. Lots of little X's. And if you want more of a textural effect than this, you can always increase the extremes of the two colors that come in together. For example, you can add a little bit more of a touch of black to your gray. Make it a little bit of a darker gray. Push that back and forth, and then you can push in, alternate your white with it, and then push that back and forth. I hear my sweet puppy dog in the background. She is normally never a barker, but we have all these kittens. They're just everywhere around our property now. I don't know where they're coming from, but they are out there and they have her attention. So my husband's gonna go take care of it. That's okay. No, did you hear Ira barking? Yeah. Yeah, she. If like a pet cat comes into her world here in the house, then she's really friendly. But if they're out in the yard, like a stray cat, not so friendly. She chases them like a squirrel, and it's kind of scary. It's scary for the squirrel or the cat. So, yeah, she's very fast, and that would actually make me sad to see her get one. All right, so here we go. We're going to keep this going. Lots of just a nice mix between the gray and the white. Just back and forth. This is a really fun, therapeutic part of the process. Really helps you relax. Something else I want to show you too, if you do happen to have a bigger brush, this is a 1/2 inch, this is a 3/4 inch, but a really nice big 3/4 inch is also really nice for just doing a nice repetitive step with this texture and then pushing in a lot more of that white into the larger areas of the background too. So don't be afraid of a little bit of a larger brush too if you happen to have one. I go ahead and switch back to my mama and just keep working in little tiny hatch marks of those white, almost like stripes really, but then they soften up as soon as they hit that wet paint, and then they just work right into the background. And then I think you can see it there in the monitor really clearly. I do have a little bit of a Sharpie line work done here, and we're starting to include that in our kits too. So I just go ahead and include a permanent marker so that you can do that optional hard line edge if you want. It is extremely helpful for doing lettering, which we don't really have that happening here. Well, we do have it on that. I have a little bit of a different design happening here than what I did in my model, but especially if we had lettering here, I could go ahead and use the Traceable to put all the lettering on, and it would preserve that on your canvas, and you could do a little bit of an overpaint and still have that line work there for you, and that way you wouldn't have to cut in around all of it. It would just bleed through the paint. So sometimes using that permanent marker is very, very helpful. It's also helpful for just coming back in and doing some corrections, tidying up your line work at the end, so it's really nice. So we're starting to include that in our kit too. Makes it nice and easy. The only caution on the permanent marker is you just really want to make sure that your paint is completely dry. Like if you're using, like this is not I need to be careful about how I say this. So I did all of this permanent marker work in the very beginning. But if you do happen to use your permanent marker at the very end to do that tidying up and that detail work like I mentioned with lettering and stuff, then you just really want to make sure that your paint is completely set up and dry before you use it for that in the very end. Because wet paint, if you put a permanent marker on top of wet paint, it will just immediately kill the permanent marker and you'll have to throw it in the trash. So that's the only thing you just really have to be careful with. Other than that, you can really use it for a lot of fun things with your painting process. So, very helpful. All right, still continuing on with this little cross stroke of our white and our gray. Just back and forth, lots of detail here. Running out of gray, so I'm going to go ahead and just do a little tiny touch of that black again in with the white. Let's get another fresh mix of that happening. And then of course I've still got plenty of white off to the side, so we're good there. I'm going to go ahead and just keep pushing this back and forth. And when you do the cutting work, again, remember to go ahead and turn that brush and hold it more like you would hold a pencil. That'll give you more precision and more of a nice straight line edge to go around the entire shape. And then when you go back to the feathering out, then you can go ahead and turn the handle more over to the side. And then just continue to just crisscross back and forth. All right, so we have a beautiful neutral gray tone that's happening all the way around. so that's very nice. All right, the next step will be to start to come in with the bright colors. And I like to start with the lightest colors first. So I would make sure that all of my black hard line work will be done at the very end, because we don't want that to disrupt and muddy up our really light bright colors. So I'm going to come in next with my really pretty bright yellows. And let's see here. So I will have some primary yellow. All right, we're going to do about a nickel's worth there. All right, and then let's do some cadmium yellow too. And just a little pea-size amount. All right, and then I want to also pull in a little bit more of the white here. So let's see, here we go. We've got some titanium white. Maybe, I've used a lot of this. All right, so nice healthy dollop of the white, more like a quarter size amount there. Heaping quarter size amount. All right, so now here we go. We're gonna go ahead and take our little bit brush. There it is. And I'm gonna start by doing just a nice little push into the white and then a push into that bright primary yellow. And then maybe just a little tiny touch of that cadmium. So bigger concentrations of the primary yellow and the white, and then just tinier touches of that cadmium yellow here off to the side. So I'll push all that in. And then before I go to the canvas, I'm going to go ahead and do a little spin here into the paint. So I'll just kind of twirl it. So that'll get my brush more out to a nice fine point. And then I will go ahead and start to apply this into each one of those little petal shapes. Now here's what's nice about that Sharpie line being there, is that it will bleed through this really light color. So I can always see where my petals are. So I'm going to come back over that later as a finishing touch, but for right now, this just allows me to have a lot more freedom to go ahead and work into each one of those little petals. And since this vase is going to be really dark, I can actually go ahead and be pretty loose with it. So I don't have to worry about too much precision into the petal shape. I can have a little bit of some overlap and not be too concerned about that. So I'll just get a nice light wash of this color over the surface area. Now I'm being a little bit careful as I get out into the tiny amounts of gray, because I don't want to have to fix that again. So I'll try to be more careful there. But here on top of the vase, I know that I can just cut in with my darker black color, and that will just come easily right over the top of that yellow. So I'm good there. And again, we've got a little touch of that primary yellow, little touch of the white, and then we're gonna do just a teeny tiny touch of the cadmium. And then even here in the center, this is going to be really dark here in the center as well, so I can be a little bit, just sloppy for lack of a better word. I don't have to worry too much about any precision happening there. I can just do a nice light wash over the surface, just making sure that I have really good coverage over all the petals. And again, don't worry about going over the lines. Now I'm going to touch into a little bit more of that cadmium, and I'll just kind of pull out into these petals just kind of randomly, starting in the center. Going to take this all the way around, adding just a little bit more warmth in my accent. All right, beautiful. Okay, so my next step, I'm gonna go ahead and work into my beautiful pumpkin here with some orange tones. I'm gonna go ahead and put my little buddy into the water. And by the way, as you are painting, and if you don't have a chance to clean out your brushes for a minute, you can always just leave them in the water, but do make sure and at least do that because acrylic paint will set up and dry pretty quickly and it can just turn your brushes into sticks. So you do not want that to happen. So just make sure and just let them, give you a little visual here, just let them rest in the water until you get a chance to clean them off. All right, so now we have some beautiful cadmium orange, very bright and pretty. And I'm going to go ahead and do a pretty healthy amount of this here. Nice quarter size amount there. All right, and I need a little bit of a bigger brush now, so I'm going to go back to my mama brush. And you can give this a little bit of a highlight with that primary yellow as well, or even that cadmium too. That would be really pretty actually. So you can mix those two if you want a little bit of a highlight in there. So here's our cadmium again. I'm actually going to use a little bit more of that. All right, so let's get a visual on that. So I've got my cadmium orange and my cadmium yellow. And I'm going to go ahead and push into a little bit of both and just kind of mix those two together. That'll give it better coverage over the surface area too. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and work this into the pumpkin. Now as I do the line edge, I can hold the brush more with that line edge, and then it's almost like making a parentheses around the edge. Now remember, this will be black, so that'll cover over this. So I'm going to go ahead and just work all over the surface area, making sure I get really good coverage. It just makes it a lot easier with the orange. The orange has a tendency to be a little bit translucent. So if you can just work on getting really good coverage to begin with, using the flat side of your brush as much as possible. See, what happens is when you hold the brush more like a pencil towards your canvas, it's going to dig into it more. It's going to be a little bit more of a natural heavy hand. And so it'll make it a little bit more translucent. And at first, when you're doing your first coat, that's kind of predictable and expected. But then as you're wanting to have better coverage, then you can go ahead and come right back into that paint and then just try to be more deliberate with the flat side of the brush facing the canvas. And you can see I am just painting straight through those lines because I know that this is a permanent marker that it'll just bleed right through. And then this will actually be black as a final step, the eyes and the nose and the mouth. So that'll be very easy to just work right back into that with black over the surface area. And again, we've got our cadmium orange, cadmium yellow. Just making sure at this first stage we get really good coverage over the surface area. Nice opaque finish happening here. All right, beautiful. So if I want a little bit more of an accent happening, see, I can also come into a little bit of that primary yellow and then just kind of sweep it in, a little bit of an accent. Just pulling that up where those little curves happen in the pumpkin. So when the paint's still wet, so you get a nice soft blend between the two. Yay! Okay, awesome. All right, so we've got some really pretty light, bright colors down. Next up will be our roses. So now what I want to do is, let's see, let's go ahead and use our little bit brush now. And then I am going to get some primary magenta. Let's do a nice, about quarter size amount of that. And I've actually got a nice mix here of different colors I can use because all of these really blend well together. So I've got my primary magenta, my titanium white, and then I've got some orange, which when you kind of pull all those together, it can go either from some light pinks, if you stay here with your magenta and white. If you start to add in the orange, you can bring in a really pretty coral color. So I'm going to start with my primary magenta, just kind of touch into it, and then I'll touch into some of the white. And that will give me some light pink. And then I'll go ahead and just push that into the little circles. So in the beginning, our roses look like little lumpy circles. And I'll just kind of spin the brush and just like little half circles on either side and fill those in. And then I'll show you what a little bit of that coral looks like too. So if you add just a little touch of orange to this, we're going to go all three. So you can do some of that too. See, it becomes a little bit more like a salmon, peachier. So that's an option. Or you just might really like the contrast of the lighter pinks happening here. I'm going to add a little bit more white to that, just to create more contrast up against our little pumpkin. All right, so we've got the base of our roses done now. All right, now we need to come in with a much smaller little bit here. So I've got a little liner brush, just like that. And then I want to go ahead and start with some white to begin with. So I've got my pure white here, so I'm going to go ahead and just touch right into it. And then I will make just what looks like little parentheses, like little tiny parentheses, and I'll bring it all the way around in a circular pattern. So again, it just kind of feels like little half circles or like little parentheses. This is that first layer on the rose, so it's really, really pretty and easy, very nice and organic. And you can even do different colors if you want with this same process. So for example, if you were starting out with more of a light lavender, then you could still come over the top with that white and just little half circles. And as you're doing this little stroke too, you can even just do like a little bit of a wiggle with your hand. So it's not like a real perfect little half circle. Again, you can add just a little bit of a wiggle to it. And this is just that first layer. So we've got our light pink and then our white accents that come in little half circles. And then we've got one more layer that we need to do. We'll be coming in with that just momentarily with a darker shade. All right, now we're gonna have fun with the darker shades. I'm gonna take my little bit brush here, twirl it around in the water. I'm gonna dry it off. And then I will come back in with my primary magenta, this little touch here. And I'll start by making just one little spot right in the center, but it kind of feels like you make a little comma and then just lift off with a light hand. That's that little shadow right in the middle of the rose. And then you just repeat the same pattern with just teeny tiny little half circles. And I do just a slight wiggle as I do it. And I'm a little bit more minimal with the darker shade. I just do a few of those. I was much more heavy-handed with the white. We had a lot more white coming in. So the darker shade, in this case it's a magenta, is just a little bit more of a shadow and an accent. So again, much more minimal with that. But always start with that little, this looks like a little comma right in the center. Just kind of push and then lift off with a light hand. And again, it just kind of feels just like a little comma. And then just tiny little half circles, a little bit of a wiggle. So this is when a shaky hand is definitely just more of your friend. So it just really creates a nice, fun little pattern for our abstracted roses. Really pretty. So we've got that done. All right, now I'm going to come in with some really beautiful leaves over the top. So we're going to switch gears with our colors. So we're going to go to Primary Cyan. This is also very similar to like a cobalt blue. Alright, so I'll do kind of a nickel size amount of that. We just have some tiny details here with our green. Alright, and then I'm going to do some cadmium green. And then I want a little bit more of that white again. So I'm going to take, got some white over here off to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that off. My plate was over here that we started in the beginning. And just use that here. Alright, so I've got a nice little mix of the white and that blue and that green. And I'm going to mix all those together. This gives me a really pretty turquoise color. Now I also want to show you a different color too. And again, that's equal parts, but another really pretty color we have in our kit. I love this color. It's called Viridian. And it has a really gorgeous teal quality to it. So it's already more in line with that green family to begin with. And then you can add little touches of white to that too. Very pretty. So you can take a little bit of your white and then touch that into that Viridian. So they're slightly different, both very beautiful, and you can just touch into both of these, and this will help you make your little tiny leaves up here. So I am going to do a little twist into the paint. So this will load up the brush, but it also twists it into a nice fine point. And then I can go ahead and start to work into these little tiny leaf shapes. So the leaf shape kind of feels like a little parentheses, and then another little parentheses on each side, and then you just go ahead and fill those in. Now I have to be a little bit careful with mine. My orange is still a little bit wet, so it might be pulling in some of that color into that teal, so I'm going to be really light-handed. Working at home, you can actually just let that set up and dry before you paint in over the top, and then you won't have to worry about any of those colors blending together. They don't play that well together. They become very brown and muddy, so you do have to be careful with that. So my recommendation would be just to make sure that you wait and let it set up a little bit before you come back in with all of your really pretty leaves. And then that way the green just stays very bright and vibrant. And if you're more traditional and just want a little bit more of that basic green, then you can also just do the cadmium green with a little bit of white too. And then if you want it to be more of a sage green, then you can always add just like a little bit of super tiny touch of some black. And what that does is that creates the white and the black mix, making a gray, and then that mixes with your green, and that makes a really pretty sage color. So that's also a nice look for the fall. I'm coming over the top primarily to give my orange more of some setup time. And then I'll just work in with as light of a hand as possible over the top. And I'm going to get a little bit of a smaller brush for these little areas right in here. So let's see. Yeah, because this one's even smaller. And I can rotate this into a much smaller point. So I'm having to hold the brush way over on the side so that it doesn't dig too much into the paint, because again, my orange is still a little bit wet. And just remember to keep kind of doing that little bit of a twist too, just to keep it rounded out to that nice fine point. Then I'm going to come right back over all of these and then just have them go a little bit more to a curvy point. Just kind of re-emphasize all of them. And I'm coming back in with more of that Viridian as a nice accent right over the top. So this is nice because it's allowing a lot of that turquoise to still be a really beautiful contrasting undercoat. And then that Viridian comes up right next to it and adds just a nice darker accent right next to it. So it's really nice. We're almost done with our fun little leaves. one more little fine point right up in here. Yay! Okay, so we have our fun little leaves done now. And then I'm gonna go ahead with, since we have all of our brights done, then I'm gonna go ahead and do just a few more accents of white over our sunflower. And then I'm gonna come in with a lot of the darks, because it's safe now to come in with those. All right, so I'm going to be using my little bit brush again, and then some of that white. Let's see, let's go in with this. We have a lot more white here. Just a little line of white. And I'm just gonna add a few little accents here and there. So I just lightly follow the curve of the petal. All right, so we're good on our accents now. Okay, so now I'm going to come in with our black. Okay, so here we go. And let's start small first. So let's see, where's my black? There's my black. All right, so I want to make sure I can add just a little bit of moisture to this to help it have a more fluid feel to it so it can get into those tiny little areas. Now here's a little warning with this too. You really, if you're working with any water, I definitely encourage you to do that, but just make sure that your canvas is just flat on your dining room table. You don't want it at an angle, because it can get a really bad water run if you have too much water. So especially if you're a beginner, I just encourage you to go ahead and place it flat, and then you'll be totally safe. And then you can play with a little bit more water into the mix here. So I've got a nice fluid feel happening with just a little bit of that touch of water. That will help me get into these tiny little areas here. And again, this is my little bit brush. So I'll use little bit to go ahead and work into all these tiny little areas. And the basic motion of it when you're doing your cut-in work around all the little petals just kind of feels like you make the letter V. That's looking really good. And this part of the process just really takes a lot of patience. And a lot of times what happens, if you ever start to experience that dry brushing where it becomes, you see a lot of peekaboo canvas happening. Again, you can just add a little bit of water to the paint. It will help it flow into those areas with much greater ease. But again, just make sure that your canvas is flat, and then that way you won't have to worry about water runs. And I'm also going to be going back over my lines with a really delicate black line to separate the petals, but we'll do that at the very end too. Again, just feels like lots of little bees. All right, now that we've got our line work that still has to be done, then I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I've got a little bit more water in the consistency of my black paint. So it's very delicate, and then I want to make sure I've got a nice fine point with my brush. I'm going to really twirl that into the paint, and then I'll just very lightly go over those little lines that are bleeding through there. This will help separate those little petals. But I don't want the line to be too severe or thick. So again, I want to make sure that the point of my brush is very, very tiny. So again, I need a tiny little bit brush, a little bit more water in the consistency of the paint, and then really twist it out to a nice fine point. And since our center will be black, you can actually just go right into the center as well. You don't have to worry about avoiding that space in there. This is also an area where, since our kit includes a little permanent marker, if you would feel more comfortable doing your really precise line work with that permanent marker, you can also do that. And that's where I was talking about, where you definitely want to make sure that your paint is completely dry. You don't want to come back over the top with a permanent marker over wet paint, because you'll just have to buy a new one. It'll just ruin it right away. But it's very helpful for that. I think I may be done. So here we go. All right, so now I can start to work into my center because this is all going to be just a really pretty black here in the middle. I'll just fill all this in. All right, really pretty. And then I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of our black done here in our little base. So still continuing on with the little bit brush because it does have a nice fine point and it makes it a lot easier to get into these tiny little areas. So a little circular curve there. And then again, same thing here, but just smaller. Very nice. I need a little bit more black. All right, so we have some black somewhere. There it is. All right, so more Mars black. I've got quite a bit more to do here, so I went ahead and did a nice heaping dollop of that. I'm about to switch gears to more of a flat so that I can do that bottom line. All right, so I'm going to switch to a mama brush. All right, so here's mama again. Nice flat point there. So I'm going to go ahead and push back and forth into the black. And see, it's very nice and thin on the edge. That's what we want. So firm pressure, push back and forth. That loads up the brush, but then we also maintain a nice fine line. So then I can take this all the way across the bottom here. I'm gonna firm up this line here too. So I've got nice thin line, and then I'll take this all the way across. All right, so I've got the face to do, but this is way too big, so I'm gonna go ahead and put Mama back into the water. And let's see here. Got my little buddy, need little buddy again. So I'm gonna go ahead and push back and forth into the black paint. Nice firm pressure as I loaded the brush, so I've got a nice thin line edge. And then I'll go ahead and just work into these little triangle shapes. And this is another time when your little permanent marker in the kit really can be handy. So if you want to let all this set up and dry and just do this with permanent marker, you certainly can. Very fun and easy. Very good. So now I have a few little accents to do over the top. I'm going to put my little buddy brush into the water. And let's see here. I want to go ahead and do, I've got my little bit brush again, and we're going to go ahead and just use that cadmium. Let's see, what is this? Cadmium yellow. Yes, cadmium yellow. This guy right here. And we'll use this as a fun accent over the top of our pumpkin. And so now that this is set up quite a bit, this will really just come in right over the top as a nice accent. If you were to put it on too early when the paint's still wet, it would just softly blend in and you would lose it as an accent. So I'm gonna do a little twist here into that color. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just follow this little line here. So it has a little bit more dramatic impact when it's just, when all that orange is dry underneath. So this is quite a bit more vibrant and resting right on top of that. All right, so I picked up a little bit of black on that. That was kind of a little happy accident. It actually created a nice little shadow since it softly blended with the cadmium yellow, so I just went with it. There are times when I go, whoops, and then I have to teach you how to fix that and lift it off your canvas. I got lucky that time. It just ended up making a nice little shadow. So we're gonna leave it. But yeah, if you do have a little oops and you have to lift, you lay it flat, you get a little Q-tip, a little bit of water, or a teeny tiny brush, and just clear water. And if you get to it very quickly, you can do a little bit of just teeny tiny water on the surface of it, and then take a little piece of paper towel or the Q-tip and just kind of push on it, and then we'll just lift that right off. I need to make a video where I just show that technique. I was gonna say, I have some videos where I just actually make a mistake, and so you get to see me fix it. But sometimes those are a little bit hard to find because I'm not exactly sure where I made a boo-boo in all my other videos. So occasionally, and then it just works out because it becomes a teachable moment where, oops, I made a mistake and here's how I fix it. All right, so we have fun little accents there. And then if you want to soften that up a little bit, that's up to you. You can come right back in with just a little bit of the orange too. And just kind of, you know, if you were wanting to like do a little soft paint into it, it's just, I'll try a little bit of yellow here too. Now I'm using a little bit of the primary yellow. And a little bit of the orange. Give you a feel for what that looks like. But you can kind of softly go right back in over the top with a little bit of that orange just to kind of soften it back up again too. Very nice. And then I want to do just a little touch here of like a taupe color that accents the base. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little buddy and I'm going to mix up, I need some more primary yellow. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take some primary yellow. So I've got little pea-sized amount of my primary yellow. I've still got my white and a little bit of the black. So I'm going to take a little touch of that yellow, bigger dollop of the white, mix those two together. Let's do one more big dollop of white. And then a tiny touch of the black. So this will give me like a nice light taupe color. It's just going to be a little bit of an accent right over the top here on this lovely base. So I'm going to put that back into the water. All right, I'm going to take the end of a brush this time and just push down into that paint. I'm going to use the circle side and just do a tiny little dot. This is just a fun little pattern. This is a nice, easy way to always do polka dots too. So if you want to do a polka dot pattern on something, of course you can use a larger brush handle to get a larger circle. I just really like using this little circle accent here. So I'll take this all the way around. And as I'm lining these up, I try to place them in center points of the biggest parts of the vase, and then I'll fill in kind of equidistance from there so that you don't have them get too crowded as you're doing your little dot pattern here. And then that way, when we come back in for a little bit of line work in between, it just simplifies that process. So we're filling it as much as we can with the easy dot pattern, because that's the easiest thing to do. And then when we do the little dash work, then that won't be as tedious, because we'll just fill into those little tiny areas. And it also keeps you from having to do really long lines. So long lines can be challenging, especially if you have a little bit of a shaky hand. So it's much easier to have little short dashes to do in between. All right, so you can use the thin, fine point of the brush now, do a little twist into that paint. Same color, and just twist right into it. And then you can just do a little tiny dash in between. And you want to make sure it stays really thin on the top, so you just have to keep twirling it into that paint so it stays really, really tiny. So it's just a really light sketch in between. I think I got it all. Yay, awesome. All right, so it is looking beautiful. I think that may be just about it. There could be a few little, if you want to make little curly cues, let's talk about that a little bit. So we could do a few little curly cues up here. So I'm going to use just a hint of this taupe, and then just a little bit of the black. Let's do a little twirl into our paint here. Just kind of making a warm charcoal color. And then if you want, you can add just tiny little curly cues. Just add a few of those here and there. And I'm using my pinky to kind of help balance my hand as I do these really tiny little strokes. Just make sure if you do that little technique, it does help stabilize your hand, but you just want to make sure that you don't press your pinky down into wet paint. All right, then I can add just a few little dots in here too for just a little bit more of an accent. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of a bigger handle and then just that white paint. See right there on the edge. And then I'll just press straight forward. This is almost like just a little nice hint of maybe like baby's breath coming through here. In our little boho floral little accent here on top of our jack-o'-lantern. You can just go crazy with these things. Very therapeutic too, by the way. So easy to get carried away, do lots of little accents. All right, so I think that we can be done think so. Yeah, I think we're done. Yeah, looks beautiful. All right. So thank you so much for joining me today. This has been very fun, very therapeutic and relaxing. Let me give you a little overview. Maybe some of you have just joined us. But I have all these awesome traceables. So this is what helps every beginner be able to paint this with me. And so the kit comes with the traceable. It's already sized to go right with our canvas that comes with it. The graphite paper. It also comes with the colored pencil to do the tracing so that you can see where you've been as you go. A little bit of fun, fancy little tape to help secure it while you're doing it. Also permanent marker, paint, brushes, has everything you need. So if you don't have anything, you get the kit, you can just start. Well, you will maybe want to get some water for your house. I can't ship water. So, too heavy, yes. So, yay, very fun. So yes, check us out, tipsyartist.com. That's where we sell all of our beautiful paint kits. We have tons of really fun fall designs as well. And lots of Christmas coming up too. So awesome. Yes, good times. All right, so I will see y'all again. I think tomorrow we're coming back doing another live to show you another painting. And I just hope y'all have a beautiful Friday. And I'll see you soon.